Hello and welcome to another exciting new episode of Talking About Stoicism. I thought we would cast Seneca aside for 1 week because I received a question that I actually thought was a really nuanced and good question that allows us to explore the inner workings of Stoicism a bit. So I'm going to read you the question. I won't read the person's name because I don't know if they want that. It was a public comment, but still, out of respect. I'm a newbie and loving this series. Thank you. So I want to ask something. 1. So is it wrong to say I'm proud of my money if I am the one who's working hard to earn it? Sure, it's the money. The riches has the value, but it's me who sees and gives value to it. So why shouldn't I say that it's because of me the money has value? If the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, why shouldn't I say it's me who gives value to, let's say, a painting by some Dutch painter? I think that is a very nuanced question and a very good question. And here's what I think. Here's what I think the Stoics would say. Working on the premise that Epictetus, Musonius Rufus, I can't speak, sorry. Marcus Aurelius, they're all dead. So I mean, I'm trying to reason through, based on how I understand Stoicism, what they would say. As to money, Stoics would say money is a preferred indifferent. In other words, money is something that in itself is neither good or bad, but all else being equal, we would rather have money than not have money, and therefore it is a preferred indifferent. The opposite of that would be a dispreferred indifferent, which would be something like disease. Disease in itself doesn't have to be bad. I'll come back to what I mean by that. But all else being equal, you would rather not be ill than be ill. Now, why do I say disease is not bad? Because obviously disease is bad. What the Stoics mean by indifferent is it is indifferent to virtue. The most important thing for a rich and fulfilling life is to be virtuous in the mind of the Stoics. That rich and fulfilling life, remember, they call eudaimonia. Rich and fulfilling life. I'm going to translate that as. Money is indifferent to virtue. Let's take an example. Banks. Certain banks now say we only invest in ethical opportunities. That would be positive. Then you use money for good. But there are also banks that say we don't care. We invest in anything that can be fossil fuels. That can be all kinds of things that are terrible for the planet. That could be violations of human rights. We don't care. We just invest in anything that makes us money. Well, then that would be bad. And now money is actually not virtuous at all. Now it has become a vice. The use of that money has become a vice. And as to disease, I promise I'd come back to that. Of course, disease is bad, but you can choose to still remain virtuous. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but in principle, disease does not prohibit you from trying to be as virtuous a person as you can be, and therefore it's still an indifferent because that disease is indifferent to virtue. Okay. It's a common misunderstanding, and that's why I think this is another interesting reason to talk about this, that Stoicism implies some sort of Spartan way of living. But that is not entirely true. The first Stoic, Zeno of Citium, was trained by a Cynic, another school of philosophical thought in ancient Greece. Now the Cynics, they did believe that poverty was a good thing. So, in the words of Massimo Pigliucci, who wrote very interesting books about Stoicism, not a surprise, cynicism never went viral. Right? If you talk about you should just give away your money is not important, people don't like that. They didn't like it in ancient Greece, they don't like it now. So the Cynics would absolutely say you don't need money to be happy. In fact, the less money, the better it is, because it's just a distraction from your virtue. But Stoics don't say that. Seneca, that we are more or less discussing at this point of the whole talking about Stoicism series of videos, Seneca was an investment banker, or the ancient equivalent of an investment banker. He is quite clear, and unfortunately I don't have a letter or one of his moral essays here where he says this, but I seem to recall him writing, and I'm paraphrasing here, things along the lines of, if you have money, may as well enjoy it, right? He was very, very, very rich. Well, that's an easy thing to say. He offset that by also saying, but there are periods every month where I deny myself riches, where I sleep on a very simple bed, where I sleep on the ground, where I take cold baths, where I only eat bread and drink water. So that's to compensate. But when you have something, you may enjoy it. In fact, I would say the most important thing in Stoicism is to lead a happy life. And that may involve making money and enjoying the money that you have. I don't believe any Stoic is against that. So don't confound Stoicism with cynicism, where you have to let go of all your material possessions. The famous story of the cynic who had a cup, it was one of his few possessions, had a cup to drink water, to scoop up water and drink, and then he saw a young kid scoop up water with his hand, and then he got pissed off with himself and said, I don't even need to, why do I have this cup? Throw out the cup because I can just use my hands, right? But that's not Stoicism, that's cynicism. Having said that, it is again a nuanced story, because Stoics would say, but beware. If you make your happiness contingent upon money, and you lose that money, which may well happen for whatever reason, then you are no longer happy, because your happiness depended on you having money. And that is dangerous. That is dangerous, because now you have made your happiness depend on something that you may lose, and losing that money may not be entirely within your control. Or for that matter, retaining that money may not fully be within your control. So there is that. Then there is the aspect of pride and being proud. The problem with pride is that pride is not a virtue. Wisdom and courage and temperance, for example, are virtues. And justice is another virtue. I didn't say that because I was just struggling to remember what the fourth cardinal virtue was. Justice. Okay, so those are virtues, and each virtue is associated with its negative, which would be a vice. So, for example, temperance, everything in moderation, that is a virtue. But gluttony, overindulging in things, indulgence, that is a vice that goes along with that, right? Because if you overdo one thing, then it becomes a vice, then it's no longer a virtue. That makes sense? So if you're not temperate, but you eat too much and drink too much, then you are no longer temperate, and then you become viceful. Pride is not a virtue, not one of the cardinal virtues. And the problem, I think, and I'm trying to reason this through from the sort of Stoic theory, I think the problem with pride is that because it's not a virtue, you have to be very careful with it. Because pride can lead to all kinds of negative things. For example, again, what if you lose your money? Then your source of pride is gone. Pride can also lead, I'm not saying it does for you, person who asked this question, I'm just trying to make a general point. Pride can lead to boasting. Pride, you being proud, can be hit my mic. You being proud could be regarded as unpleasant by other people. And then a Stoic would say, but what other people think about you, that's up to them. However, a reality is, if you're always a good person, or at least try to be a good person, they're a lot more likely to like you and prefer to be in your company than if you are boastful, unpleasant, arrogant, etc. So it's a thin line. I come back to Seneca tells us you can enjoy your money. You don't have to throw it all away. I mean, I think by today's standards, he would at least have been a millionaire, if not a billionaire, okay? So he was very, very, very rich. Why would he not enjoy that wealth that he had amassed? Is it not a little bit appropriate to say, I have worked very hard for my station in life to be where I am today? And I think there is nothing wrong with once in a while taking a moment and telling yourself you've done well. If you are in a good place in life, you have done well. And you can allow yourself to enjoy that for a moment. Just do not let it distract you from virtue, from doing the right thing. And do not make your happiness contingent upon that feeling of, see what I've accomplished? I'm on top of the world. Because if at any time that station in life changes because of illness, because of the loss of a loved one, because you lose your job, then your happiness would end. Right? Because your happiness was dependent upon that specific state in life. And I do think that is an important point to not lose sight of. The final thing I will say, and then I'll let you go, is also remember the first time I heard someone say this, of all people, was Tom Hanks in an interview. And I thought it was, he kind of said it tongue-in-cheek, but I thought it's one of the most stoic things. It is the most stoic thing I've ever heard Tom Hanks say. He said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said, this too will pass. But people forget that also applies to good things, right? People always, now it's me talking, people always say when something bad happens, this too will pass. But don't forget, that applies to the good things in life as well. They may also pass. You may lose a loved one. You may lose a job, a house, a car, a child, a friend, whatever. The good times may also end. And that, I think, is another misunderstanding about Stoicism, that people think it's a very doom and gloom type philosophy, where you continuously think about, I may lose this, I may lose that, but that's not true either. You don't continuously think about it, but you find a balance. And the standard example is that of the Roman generals who are charioted back into the city after a victory, who had slaves standing behind them, whispering in their ears, you are mortal, you will die, you will die, you will die. That's extreme. But finding the balance is important, and that is, in my mind, one of the keys to a healthy mental life. When things are bad, find the balance and tell yourself, but it will pass, because it will pass. One way or another, it will pass. But when things are very good, also once in a while, take a second to think, this too might pass. What will I do then? What is my contingency plan? If this job doesn't work out, if this relationship doesn't work out, if this, that, or the other, whatever, right? Because that too may pass. I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying that it might. And Stoicism is a school of philosophy that makes you think about those things too. Makes you consider that this too may pass goes both ways. So, coming back to the money issue, you may enjoy it now, but remember, you could lose it. What are you going to do then? Where will you be? Who will you be? What will you do when that happens? It's a good mental exercise, once in a while. Not all the time, because then you are doing what Seneca calls taking an advance on future troubles. You don't even know what's going to happen yet, and you're already worried about it. That's not the point. No worrying, just thinking. What if this doesn't work out? What will I do? How will I react? And if your mind is made up at that point, if I now lose this job, here's how I will react. Your mind's already kind of made up. And when it happens, if it happens, it may not happen, but if it may happen, you're already prepared. And it might be a little easier. It'll still suck. There's no two ways about that. But there you are. I hope this was worth your time, me talking about this. But I thought this very concrete and very nuanced example was a good opportunity to try and delve a little more deeply into some of the core tenets, often misunderstood core tenets, I think. And that's nobody's fault. It's just because there's this societal idea of Stoics are emotionless robots. No, they are not. I like to think I'm as stoic as I can be, but I have a full range of emotions. I also cry and I also laugh and I do all those things, but everything within limits and to the extent that it happens when I want it to happen, and that it doesn't distract me from leading a good and happy life. That's the point. That's what Stoicism is about. Making the war up here end so you can actually enjoy your life. And that can make a huge difference. Anyway, I'll leave it here because I've taken up too much of your valuable time already. I hope this was useful. Please leave thoughts, suggestions, comments, other questions below. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll gladly see you again next week. Bye-bye.